My name's Sarah Rood and I'm an oral historian. Recently I've been working with Museums Australia Victoria on an oral history project, and we've been working with ex-service communities to train them in how to undertake oral history projects. One of the reasons that I'm so drawn to oral history is that it brings the past to life in a way that is so tangible and so real. Embarking on an oral history project can be a little bit overwhelming. So we've put together this short film to introduce you to the idea of undertaking an oral history project and outline some of the key steps and processes that you might want to think about as you embark on your oral history journey. Oral history interviews are really exciting, and one of the reasons for that is that we actually get to talk to people about the past that they've lived through, and it comes to life. But it's really important that we consider the ethical issues that come along with doing an oral history interview. Getting a permission form or a rights agreement form signed by your interviewee is really important, and this really allows the interviewee to decide what's going to happen to their interview once it's completed. Is it going to be transcribed, and where is it going to be stored, and what sort of access are people going to have to their interview? It's really important to remember that it is their story and it always will be their story. Accessibility is really important with oral history interviews, and one of the most effective ways that we can make sure other people can have access to the interview is by transcribing it. And it's really, really important that once you do the transcript that you give it to the interviewee so that they have the chance to approve and review what they've actually said in their interview, keeping in mind that it is their story. Memory is really unpredictable, and when we do an oral history interview, we're walking someone through the experiences in their life, and emotion pops up sometimes where you expect it to, but also sometimes when you don't expect it to. As an interviewer, you need to be really switched on to that, and if your interviewee is upset, it's your responsibility to check in with them and make sure that they're okay, and if that means connecting them to a counselling service, then that is what you need to do. Being well prepared for an interview is really important, and the best way that you can do that is by undertaking background research and really carefully planning your questions. When you think about your questions, it's important that you think about what you want to ask, but then also how you're going to ask it. And what we mean by that is asking questions in an open-ended way that gives your interviewee a lot of room to answer the question. Developing a generic set of interview questions for your project is a really great idea, but it's also really important that you give yourself the room to customise those questions for each interviewee and their experience. Have a very clear idea of what you want to get through in your interview, so a really strong thematic structure. But don't worry too much if you don't manage to cover all of the questions that you have. You can always go back and reschedule another interview with your interviewee. A great way to feel more confident as an interviewer is to practice your questions. So once you've written your questions and you're confident with them, find someone that you know and practice asking those questions. We live in a really exciting time for doing oral history interviews because we have such great equipment available to us all. And having good equipment means that we can record really well. So we should always be recording in a WAV form. As well as being really high quality, WAV formats are quite flexible and really gives us the best possible chance that our sound files will be accessible for future generations. There's nothing worse than a bad quality sound recording that distracts you from what's being said. The good news is that there are some really simple things you can do to make sure that the sound recording is as good as possible. For example, try and find the most quiet location for your interview. Try and avoid fridges or kettles in the background or heating units. You don't want to have family members hanging around the house or dogs making lots of noise. So things like that that are really simple to take control of will allow you to maximise your recording environment. So now that we have our really high quality recording, it's really important that we take care of them. And there are really two key elements here. One is how we name our files, and two is how we store and back them up. If we think about naming the files, we want to make sure firstly that we are naming them in a consistent way that makes sense, including the name of the interviewee, the project, and the date that the interview was undertaken. But it's also really important that you introduce these things on the actual recording so that the first thing you hear when you play that file back is that information, just in case that file name gets deleted. We've all heard horror stories of losing files and of hard drives and computers becoming corrupted, and that is something that we really want to avoid. It's very simple to avoid, and the best way that we can do that is by making sure that we save our files in at least 2 different locations. If you are a Victorian collecting organisation, we highly recommend that you upload your files to Victorian Collections, and if you have the appropriate permissions, please feel free to share your interviews and your sound files. If you're not one of these organisations, then please at least have several external hard drives that you back up your interviews to. This again just makes sure that other people can reap the benefits of your oral history interviews. Being an oral historian is such a privilege and an honour, and it's actually quite difficult to put into words how amazing it feels when you sit with someone and they share their life story and experiences with you. And I really hope that some of the things that we've shared in this short film help you get the most out of your oral history project, and I really hope that you enjoy the process.